Hello, and welcome to the Woodblock, a show for people who care more about progress than partisanship. My name is John Wood. This is a political show, and here we deal with political issues. But it's important to note, before we go too much further, that politics, though it is important, is not life. Politics is important because it determines very many things about the nature of our day-to-day lives. Whatever the top tax rate is, whatever the tax rate is for everybody determines our bottom line. Whether or not we receive a certain amount of Social Security benefits or Medicaid benefits, these things matter to the quality of life of our friends and our families and our own persons. The decisions made at Washington, D.C. and in the state capitals and at our city councils, all of these things have real and pertinent consequences to us, to ordinary people, and are things that should be taken seriously. But again, politics is not life. It is only important in as much as it affects us in a real and consequential way. Yet having said that, you have to acknowledge the fact that the way we treat politics nowadays is not merely as the exchange and interaction of different ideas about how we can better our communities, how we can better our nation. No, politics today is increasingly a contact sport, a competitive fiasco of egos and special interests competing for power, competing for influences over you and over me. And it's okay to enter into the public exchange of ideas. I wouldn't be making this channel if I myself didn't want to do that. But there's a problem when the mirror we put up in front of ourselves on this vehicle that we call the media does not show the true face of America. And I would argue that the media that we're accustomed to hearing and watching and reading does not show us the true face of America. Because if it did, if we would only listen to Fox News and MSNBC and liberal blogs and conservative talk radio, it would be pretty clear that this country is divided into two parts. That's liberals and conservatives, or more pejoratively, secular socialists or laissez-faire capitalist fundamentalists. But those are not the two-faced truths of America. Indeed, we do have the left and we do have the right. And then we have everything in between. And the fact of the matter is, 33%, or roughly a third, of Americans, of voting age Americans in this country, are independents, are people who are not affiliated with one party or the other. Now, of course, in some cases, you have independents who are too liberal to be Democrats and too conservative to be Republicans. But the truth of the matter is that what this shows us is that there is a great moderate, centrist middle class, middle political class, that is, in America, that is not truly being represented by our media. Whatever the case, or whatever your preferred venue may be. No, what we see is the very profitable clash of ideologies. And while this may line the pockets of certain media interests, and while this may galvanize the followings of certain politicians or political commentators, this is a cancer in our democracy, one that needs to be cured. But it has to happen by the will of the people themselves. But of course we have to know our history a little bit better. Let's go back to the founding of our nation. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. These were all men who fought in the cause of freedom. All men who believed in liberty and the right of ordinary people to govern themselves. And while America has not always been as true to that vision as she has needed to be, our entire history is the history of progress, ongoing progress in that direction. And yet it needs to be remembered that even our founding fathers perceived liberty, perceived the laws that would benefit a civil society, the types of ideas that we would have to coalesce around, differently. John Adams despised ideology, yet he himself was a person of many biases. Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, rather Thomas Jefferson, James Madison at least, saw political parties, as most people did at those times, as an evil. But it became increasingly apparent that these were necessary evils. The political parties are necessary evils in our times too, but we should never accept the political status quo that says that certain bridges cannot be, well, that certain divides, rather, cannot be bridged. I believe that the election of Barack Obama in 2008 came from a group of people in the center of American politics who would not accept that. But the fact of the matter is we have not seen the change that we were looking for in that election. But between you and me, between Americans of all stripes, Democrat and Republican, we can overcome the partisan divide that separates us. But we must treat each other with love and respect. And on this show, it will be our purpose to examine the ideological differences between liberalism and conservatism, to see where bridges can be constructed, and how it is that all Americans can come together in a spirit of respect and a love for liberty. This has been John Wood, and you're watching The Wood Block.